like you
Really, y'all don't know this, y'all in danger. I'm a threat. I'm a gamble with your life, cause you know that it's a bet. It's a bet. You know I ain't letting up, my foot is on your neck. Take my word for it, it's a promise and a threat. Really, y'all don't know this, y'all in danger. I'm a threat. I'm a gamble with your life, cause you know that it's a bet. It's a bet. You know I ain't letting up, my foot is on your neck. Take my word for it, it's a promise and a threat. I ain't never really wanna flex my gifts, but I think it's my time, let me check my wrist. You can never dim my shine, I'ma keep on grinding till I reach the tip top. When it's just in my jeans and I ain't looking back, cause I'm feeling like Chris, bro. They can never slow me down, but they need to hate me, now I'm feeling like Chris. Rock with the team, cause you know that we winning, we with it, we going, we flowing again. I might just go by a Benz, I might just blow my advance, whoa. I did it all for the feeling, alive but I'm making a killing. I'm gonna break every ceiling, cause I need $1 million, but I don't need your money, you can pay me in respect. Cause once I do it big, what's to follow is a check. I need 100 bags, nothing more, nothing less. And the ops feel away, cause I'm next, I'm a threat. Oh yeah. Really, y'all don't know this, y'all in danger, I'm a threat. I'm a gamble with your life, cause you know that it's a bet. It's a bet. You know I ain't letting up, my foot is on your neck. Take my word for it, it's a promise and a threat. Really, y'all don't know this, y'all in danger, I'm a threat. It's a gamble with your life, cause you know that it's a bet. You know I ain't letting up, my foot is on your neck. Take my word for it, it's a promise and a threat. I ain't been feeling spectacular, flow so sick it's hazardous. Y'all still suck like Dracula. Sip this beat, let's back it up. And I don't care about critics, cause they talk too much, and I know that I gotta keep on grinding, finding myself. I ain't gonna stop until I know I had enough. Mama, I made it, I know that they see me, I'm popping these bottles just like I'm a genie. I'm glad that you made me, it's all in my DNA. I'm up my chips like I'm working for Frito-Lay, and bet the bag on myself. I don't do this for my health. Every threat is a champion. Got the title, need a belt. I don't need your money, you can pay me in respect. Once I do it big, what's to follow is a check. I need 100 bags, nothing more, nothing less. And the ops feel away, cause I'm next, I'm a threat. Oh yeah. Really, y'all don't know this, y'all in danger, I'm a
Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. Winter workouts over. Spring practice just around the corner. Penn State competed in the NFL Combine and did very well. Some new college football rules that are going to really piss me off. And a recent decommit that we do have to discuss. All that and more in this week's episode. Thanks for hanging out. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen. And see you in just 1 second. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I'm Cory Lestochi. With me, as always, the great Shawn Kane. How are you doing today, Shawn?
Not too bad, Cory. We're at the hump day point in the week. It's kind of a in-between time for sports in general, I think. The time between the Super Bowl and March Madness, kind of that in-between time. College basketball is about to start heating up, and that's always exciting.
March Madness right around the corner. Spring practice starts on There we go.
All right, we are back.
We're back. Yeah, no, I'm excited for Luke Combs' concert. We actually, between that and the blue and white and closing on the house, it's a busy April coming. So enjoying March while we can.
Yeah. God, I can only imagine closing on a house. I've just been a renter in my life, so. Did you have a house in Alabama too?
No, we rented.
Rented out there too. Okay, yeah. I didn't know if you did or not, but yeah. And then you got your wedding coming up.
Yeah, that's true. That's we got some time from now though, thankfully. But yeah, we got that coming up as well. So
You're in that 1-0 mentality. Just got to get through the house first.
very much so. Very much in a 1-0 mentality when it comes to the house and whatnot. But it's also nice though that we have some real things to talk about football wise today.
Yes.
A lot to discuss. I guess let's start with the winter workouts wrapping up. The 8th workout was, I guess, last Thursday, I think technically. And they're done. So no more winter workout competitors of the day. All that is in the books officially. We can only speculate on what that means for the quarterback position, but I wanted to provide you with the final standings for the competitor of the day. For quarterbacks, Bo Perbula won 4. Running backs, Nick Singleton won 4. Wide receivers did not have a leader. Amari Evans had 2. Malik Mega had 2. Tight ends, Joey Schlafer had 3. Nick Dawkins for offensive line had 3. Defensive line, Zariah Fisher had 4. Linebackers, Tyler Elzen led the way with 3. Corners, Cam Miller had 3. Safeties, Lamont Payne had 3. And for special teams, long snapper, Tyler Dzansky had 4. So that's where we wrapped up with the leaders for the winter workouts. Anything of note, Shawn, or are you just tired of me talking about these?
The thing with the winter workouts that we talked about them the last 2 years since I've been on the pod. And it's just so hard to gauge what exactly they mean. So I kind of think the best people to ask, probably the former players. And I know Hack talked a little bit about this on his pod. I think he said something along the lines of winter workouts. It's more about just surviving, getting through them, persevering. Like they're going to test your mental strength more than anything, having to wake up at 4:30 in the morning and then go and just brutalize you, basically. It's just such a tough physical toll and tough mental toll. And then Landon Tengwall, actually, on the Lions 247 pod, this was around the time that Bo was racking up the wins, and he said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, don't worry about Drew. I mean, something like winter workouts is going to be where a guy like Bo, who's just such a great athlete, and he's probably the best running quarterback we've had in over a decade, that's going to be an environment where he's going to really thrive. And Bo's got a really competitive nature as well. So I think survival, and then, I think from what I've gotten from the former players is it's about survival, getting through it, persevering, and then as far as who wins the day, a lot of that comes down to your athleticism. It seems like that's what I get from how they pick who wins, who's the big winner in that day.
Biggest thing for me is leadership, right? I will harp on that till the cows come home. That leaders are born in the last 2 months that we've just went through, and we can talk about it in a second. But Drew Aller interviewed with Thomas Frank Carr, T. Frank, I think it was yesterday, and spoke a little bit about how they have more vocal leaders this year than they maybe did last year. And to me, I've always said, and I think, Shawn, you're in the same camp with this, it's nice to have the Jordan Hill leaders who are quiet role models, but you've got to have the guys that are willing to get in someone's face and tell them they're wrong. And from what we've heard, there might be a little bit more of that this year. So that's to me where this is all born. That to me is why I harp on it, because to me, I want to see my leaders being the competitors of the day. Yeah,
and I get that. It's so it's such like a weird thing to evaluate though, right? Like,
Right.
because we don't know the criteria and we don't see it with our eyes. We're just kind of going off what the coaches tell us. And I'm sure they have a criteria that they look for, and when they make that decision, because even though it doesn't sound like a big deal, because in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not. For those guys in the locker room, yeah, they want to be acknowledged on Twitter and seen as, it's a good confidence boost. So it's little things that do add up. And Franklin is a pretty detail oriented person, and he will tell you that all the little things matter. So I think things like this, they do matter, at least in the confines of that locker room. And at the end of the day, though, what I think, what Cory thinks, what the fans at large think, really doesn't matter. It's more about what the guys in the locker room are going through and what they're thinking.
My opinion always matters, Shawn. You should know this by now.
Of course.
Yeah, and I will defend that point to the, if you remember back in school, whether it was gym class or if you were in high school sports, there was always that one person that the coach just happened to see at the right time, and basically imprinted this image in their mind that person was a hard worker or that person was a go-getter, when everyone else knew that wasn't necessarily the case. Team player, whatever the case was, for whatever reason, the coach just happened to see the wrong thing at the right time for that specific player, and that's the image that coach will always have of that player. And that's just the way it is. So there's probably some of that going on too, and that's just, again, bias. There's nothing you can do about it. So I agree with all that. I think the winter workouts really do set the tone for the spring practice. To be honest with you, Shawn, I don't really know how good the spring practices have been the last 2 years. I'm not talking about the blue and white game specifically, but I just feel like maybe we there's some work that needs to be done as far as the spring practice and leading into the blue and white game, where we feel better about things, specifically at certain positions like the wide receiver room. And I think some of that starts in the winter workouts. So it's not the end all be all, but hopefully it leads to better things as we start walking towards August.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, I think we all remember James Franklin telling the fans, don't expect much from the blue-white game. And that's because basically the entire offensive line was hurt. So part of that, I think, was due to injury. And then, I mean, last season, the blue-white game, I think we both, the podcast after, I think we did a Wednesday show, we kept raving about Omari Evans and how well he did and how he's ready to take that next step. And I think we might have been at least a year or two early on that. So
I based a lot of things off of what we'd heard out of Omari Evans last year.
Yeah.
All the way up to summer camp and season predictions.
Yeah, and I mean, we had seen some things from him during the regular season too. In 2022, he, in largely mop-up duty, granted, but we saw that speed, and he looked, even as a former high school quarterback, he looked mature in his route running already. So, I mean, you could run routes if you're fast. If you're fast and you can run routes, you're going to be a good college football player 90% of the time. And then, of course, 2023 happened. So hopefully that was just a sophomore slump and maybe didn't exactly use him correctly. So maybe we could just chalk it up to that. And I think if there's anybody poised to have I can't believe this became an Omari Evans discussion. I think if anybody's more poised to have a breakout year, it's Omari Evans.
There we go. We're back on the Omari Evans fan club. More fan club discussions in a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens there, right? Like how much, I mean, I think it just is a good lesson there on even coming into spring practice and blue and white game. a lot can happen, a lot can change. So there's a little bit more emphasis this year because there is a new offensive coordinator in Andy Kotelnicki. So that makes maybe a little bit more under the magnifying glass and paying attention a little bit more. But we'll see. We'll see in that regard. Just since I brought up Drew Aller again, he met with T. Frank on BWI last night, and Drew Aller knocks it out of park with interviews, and can't fault the guy for it. He's very well coached as far as what he's supposed to say in interviews. It's a spitting image of James Franklin and what James Franklin would want Drew Aller to say. But there's not much substance there. And I don't mean like Drew Aller's a boring guy or anything like that. He's just very well versed on what he's supposed to say. And he does not give you too much other than that. Now, he talked a little bit about, trying to learn the offense, and he's got specific rules when he gets to the line of scrimmage. And it sounds like maybe they're trying to simplify things for him, that maybe he not that he wasn't doing well with it, but maybe just simplify it so there's some less things that he has to think about. He can just worry about playing quarterback, which I think will be good. But it seems like they're still in the very early stages of adopting to the new offensive scheme, Shawn.
Yeah, that's to be expected, right? Going from one coordinator to another, and we haven't even had spring ball yet. So, like, I feel like we referenced 2016 a lot, but with Jomo, the offense really wasn't humming until October. So, and Jomo's probably our best offensive coordinator that we may have ever had here. So it takes time. It takes time to adjust to a new system, get all the guys on the same page. And yeah, so it's learning new terminology, learning how the new coordinator works, learning new concepts. It's all part of the journey.
The Journey Brown?
Love Journey Brown.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. Other things, just what T. Frank asked if Drew Aller thought he was elite. There wasn't much of an answer there. He asked for a definition of what an elite quarterback was, which Drew Aller went kind of more the intangible route. Not exactly how I would define an elite quarterback per se, but I understand why Drew Aller does that. But again, it was what you would expect, right? He wasn't going to say, and T. Frank knows that and respects that, but T. Frank wasn't going to ask straight up like which receivers are showing up and impressing you, because Drew Aller would just name them all, right? He did mention Nick Dawkins by name as someone who's stepping up from a leadership perspective, which is something you want to hear from most likely your starting center. We've talked a lot. I think Penn State has been very blessed the last couple of years now with Juice Scruggs and Hunter Norzad. Neither of them, at the very least, was a liability, and at the very most were both really good leaders and anchors for the offensive line. And so Nick Dawkins has been around the program for a while. Nick Dawkins is part of state media. And so it'd be interesting to see if he can kind of make it a three-peat for Penn State's offensive line as far as the center position specifically.
Yeah, and Dawkins is the guy who's been here a long time. He's paid his dues, if you will. And the one thing you've always heard about him, and it shines through in their podcast, is he has such an upbeat attitude and personality. And that's part of what you need to be as center, because you are that leader. Like, if you've ever played football in the offense, quarterback is obviously kind of your colonel out there, but your center is first guy to the football, makes all the, they help the quarterback make checks at the line. So that offensive line is the centers. Like that is his group. So I think Dawkins has the personality to do it. Obviously we gotta see more on the field. And part of the problem for him has been he's been behind Juice Scruggs. And then last year he was behind a 5th or 6th year senior in Hunter Norzad. So it's just hard to get on the field then. And I think now he's paid his dues, and there's an excellent chance that he starts this year. And I think from a leadership perspective, I think Penn State fans should feel pretty good about that at the very least.
And I'll add another point to that too. When you have a new offensive coordinator trying to figure out your fronts, trying to figure out your responsibilities, having someone like that who doesn't mind being vocal goes a long way. The common phrase is over communicate along the offensive line. I don't think you have to worry about Nick Dawkins over communicating, which I think is going to be really beneficial for this Penn State offense in year one with Andy Kotelnicki.
Yeah, if you host a podcast, you tend to like to talk.
You would hope
Cory and
so.
I like to talk. Yeah, if you don't, it's going to be an awkward experience for everybody. So yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll have any problem communicating with his guys, which is obviously what you need at that center spot.
Absolutely. That was about it. Again, you can go check out the interview with T. Frank on YouTube and whatnot. Penn State representing the NFL Combine, Shawn, did not disappoint yet again. Just quick housekeeping notes. Johnny Dixon got injured in the Senior Bowl, did not participate on any on-the-field drills. Hunter Norzad, although was there, did not necessarily do as much as, I guess, you would expect. I think he just bench pressed and obviously interviewed and whatnot. And then everyone else pretty much did everything else. The other, I guess, notable, we'll talk about him more in a second, but the other notable thing was Olu did pull up with a potential thigh injury, due, I believe, to the 40-yard dash or 40-yarder, which you could make the argument that offensive linemen shouldn't be running the 40, that they should maybe just run 20, because a 10-yard split matters, but how often are offensive linemen really running 40 yards down the field for something? But other than that, Shawn, let's get into maybe just some of the players and ones that stood out. I think we have to start with Theo Johnson, because tight end Theo Johnson kind of did exactly what we thought was going to happen, and I was just overly impressed. I mean, 6'6", 259 was his official measurements. He ran the second fastest 40-yard dash with 4.57 seconds, which is insane. His vertical was 39.5 inches, which is second best. His broad jump was 10.5 feet, which was second best. His 20-yard shuttle was first. And this RAS score kept popping up on social media, the relative athletic score. They've been doing that since 1987-ish. And so they've got thousands of measurements and whatnot. Theo Johnson came in at a 9.99 out of 10. And it's kind of on like a scale. So as they get more input, the scale changes, which that might have been the second best score. Well, I'm sorry. So they've been doing RAS for a long time. That was the second best score since 1987, which is insane. So Theo Johnson made some serious money this past week, Shawn.
Yeah. And that was something that Cory certainly expected, and I did as well. Theo is a fantastic athlete, and I think that's almost short selling, and the proof is in the pudding. Just a workout freak, and I mean, he had a very good season on the field, so he's got that film to back it up. And
2 years of film to really back it up.
Yeah, really a couple of years. So I think the one thing that is a bit of a question mark with him is blocking, but honestly, in the NFL today, there aren't a whole lot of guys that do both really, really well in terms of pass catching and blocking. Even take
the top tier do, but that's about it.
Really, Kittle. I mean, Kelsey isn't a great blocker. He's a good blocker, not great. And Kittle is very good at both, even though he had 2 catches in the Super Bowl. But he is an extremely well-rounded tight end. But typically in the NFL, you're either really good at catching the ball or you're a really good blocker. Or some people just kind of suck at both. But Theo is going to be a very good pass catcher. He's going to be a guy that's going to go out wide for you. Could line up in the slot too. We used him that way quite a bit. So I mean, we know what he could do on the football field, but it's great to see him back it up at the combine. And another guy who backed it up at the combine, Chop Robinson. I mean, sub 4.5 ran a 4.48, which was the fastest among defensive ends. And I expected him to show up at the combine and do really, really well. And he did. He didn't bench, which I thought he might, because I think one of the question marks for him is size, which he weighed in at 254, which is pretty good for him. So 6'3", 254 pounds, and running a 4.8 and running a 4.48. That is still a very impressive. That is a very impressive combination. A man who's 254 pounds, typically they don't run 4.48. So
correct me if I'm wrong, Shawn, but was that? I guess besides Daquan Hardy, that was the fastest 40 time among Penn State players, right? He was second fastest behind just Daquan Hardy.
Outside of Daquan Hardy,
I think so.
Yes, yeah, because we'll get to Kane. Yes, he was the fastest one outside of Daquan.
The other thing I was going to say was the 10-yard split, which
Yep.
I think is very, very important. 1.54, tied for fourth fastest of defensive ends that weigh 250 or more since 2003. So, again, plus 250. I know he's borderline, but plus 250, he really showed out. Just want to make the note too that those measurements, 6'2", 6'3", 250. It's about what Abdul Carter's at right now. So anyone questioning whether or not Abdul Carter can play that DN position, at least at college, he from a size standpoint, he should be okay.
Yeah, I think if anything, it always looked like Abdul Carter might be a little bigger than Chop, like a little bit. They're in the same neighborhood. I always thought they're in the same neighborhood. And Chop Robinson, out of high school, people thought he might be a linebacker. So
That's
they
true.
were both tweeners coming out of high school, and they're both going to end up playing defensive end here at Penn State. And then we got to talk about our guy, Daquan Hardy.
Big fan club guy right here.
That guy, he's
just happy that he was invited to the combine, first of all.
Yeah, and we part of it is we knew he would show. We knew he'd have a big day. 5'9", 170, 179. Obviously, that's just him. Which is fine. But he ran a 4.38, which was an elite time. Like if you're a cornerback, you want to run in the 4.4s.
Right.
4.5. It's not great, but you want to run in the 4.4s. He ran a 4.38. High vertical jump to a 42.5. So that's gonna help. That's gonna help compensate for that.
I think that was the best vertical jump among corners.
It was. So if you're a little short, if you could jump high, well, that's gonna make up for it in some ways. So yeah, I think if anybody, you could argue Daquan Hardy helped his stock more than anybody at the combine for Penn State.
Yeah, we'll save the Theo Johnson conversation for another day.
Yeah, because Theo, honestly, unless he becomes a first-round pick.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Has he worked himself into somebody? Because someone's going to reach for a tight end. And at this point, I think he's in that conversation. I wouldn't put money that it's a first-round guy. But I think you put up numbers like that, he has the stats to back it up. I'm just saying he may have put himself in that conversation. But I agree with you. I think Daquan Hardy, I don't know how many combine guys don't get drafted, but I'm guessing Daquan Hardy put himself into draft status.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think he could be taken. Like before, I kind of thought 6th, 7th round pick. I think he could be drafted in the 4th or 5th round now. I mean, he's a nickelback, kind of a pure nickelback, but in the NFL, guys, like if you could perform on special teams, you're going to play a long time. Look at Michael Robinson. I mean, he had about a 10-year career playing almost exclusively special teams, especially in the second half of his NFL career. So if you can make it work on special teams, you're going to have a nice career for yourself.
That slot position is not an easy place to defend.
No.
He's done it religiously. And he has a lot of good film against good wide receivers.
Yep.
So I think in today's NFL where you almost play with three corners, I don't know, I'd probably say 35% of the time, 40% of the time, someone's going to fall in love with this guy.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think you're looking more like 5'6" than maybe 6'7".
Yeah, because he plays with the physicality too. He's not just the speed, because some guys you look at the speed, but they can't tackle. No, he can tackle. That's not his issue. So he likes getting down and getting dirty, and you have to be like, yeah, it takes a special kind of mentality to be in the slot because just things are moving so quick around you, and you might have to go help and run, or they're they're running crosses over the middle. So you have to be ready for anything in the slot. And
Right.
he's just excelled there the past 3 seasons.
Another guy I think who really helped his stock was Curtis Jacobs. 6'1", 240, 4.58 40, Shawn, which was the 5th fastest. That is a really good time for Curtis Jacobs. Like 4.5
linebacker, yes.
That's big time. Being sub 4.6, that probably made him some money right there. He had the 3rd best broad jump, and then his RAS score was 9.09 out of 10, which is 6th best out of linebackers. And so I asked this question to you, Shawn, when we were texting the other day. Is Curtis Jacobs a top 10 linebacker in this class? Now, what does that mean in the grand scheme of things? I don't really know, but I think he is.
Yeah, I think so too. And something to keep in mind, linebacker is a lot like running back in the draft, in that you don't get a ton of first round linebackers. They do happen, but there's typically 1 or 2 a year these days. For whatever reason, I still think linebackers very valuable. I understand not wanting to go with running backs as much. I don't really understand the linebackers. But yeah, I mean, when you take that into account, that most of your best linebacker 2 or 3 are probably going to be drafted in the 2nd round. Yeah, I mean, I think he's a top 10 linebacker, because I think when I look at Curtis Jacobs, I kind of see a 4th round pick. That's kind of where I've always seen him pegged. He's definitely a draftable guy. I think he's going to be a productive NFL player. But I always thought 4th, maybe a 3rd round pick, and the combine certainly helps his case. That it wouldn't shock me at all if you hear his name called on day 2.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd just be curious too, because he's pretty versatile in what he's capable of doing. I mean, he can play some edge if you need him to. He can play the Sam. He can play the Will. He can play box linebacker at the next level. So whoever picks him up, and what he showed with his speed and the ability to play in space, especially this last year, he can do a lot of different things for you. And
Yeah.
You probably still take him off on some 3rd down situations unless you're blitzing him, but I think he's pretty versatile as far as a guy, maybe if he's not a starter right away, can still be a big depth piece for you because he can play in a lot of different spots.
Yeah, he's a terrific athlete. And Franklin's told the story before of Curtis Jacobs' father actually wanted him to be a receiver in college. And it took a little bit of time of Franklin, I think probably along with some other college coaches, telling him it's going to be a better linebacker than anywhere. And
his hands.
Yeah. And it's because he's just such a terrific athlete. I believe he played safety in high school. So, this is a guy that could play kind of that new style hybrid role, in that, the whole idea of positionless basketball from the NBA. There's been a bit of a push to be positionless in the NFL on defense, and he fits that mold a little bit. Like Cory said, the versatility always just stands out with Curtis Jacobs.
His hand size was 10.25 inches. The only Penn State player that had larger hands than him was Caden Wallace at 10.75 inches. So
he's got bigger mitts than Olu.
Olu doesn't even have that big of hands, which I guess some people are knocking on. But yeah, he's got bigger hands than Chop Robinson. He's got bigger hands than he has just as big of hands as Theo Johnson. So he's got some big hands, which bigger the hands, Bigger the gloves, right?
Yeah, I think that's how that's.
Right. You want to go Kalen King next?
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, just to be blatant, just to be just transparently honest, it's not been a great, I don't know, what, 8 months, 10 months for Kalen King. And that kind of continued at the NFL Combine. Did some good things in the field work, looked smooth. But his 40 time, Shawn, 4.61 was the second worst of cornerbacks of the combine. Um, Came in shy of 6 foot, which doesn't help as far as the 40-yard time. Vertical jump, 37 inches. Nothing really to write home about there either. Um, Potential first rounder before the season started. I mean, we saw how inadvertently JPJ dropped last year for a good season and good combine. I have no idea where Kalen King is going to go at this point. I still think he's a day 2 guy, but I have no idea where he's going to go now. And again, he doesn't have great film against great talent either, which isn't going to help.
Yeah. For a corner, 40 time in the 4.6s is borderline disastrous for draft stock. And does it, by disastrous, do I mean he's not going to get drafted? No, he's going to get drafted. But it disastrous in that he probably lost the round. You know, like if teams were thinking of him as the 2nd round pick, they probably now think of him as a 3rd round pick, and that's a lot of money. And like you said, he's not the biggest guy, but he was one of the things that, and he showed this at the combine. Like, he is very technically sound, which helps. That's a big help. But if he had a better season, I think this would have been something he could work with. Like, he might have still fell into the 2nd round, but the way I watched him this year, combined with his previous work, so from it's the whole package, I kind of thought of him as like a late 2nd round pick. I probably think of him as a late 3rd round pick now. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope he gets picked ahead of that, but that's kind of where I see him.
Yeah, he does have a lot of experience. Hopefully that helps him in that regard. Lambda on YouTube had a good point just now that didn't have a great Senior Bowl either. So
No.
We'll see where he ends up. Obviously, it's not over for him. He has the pro day where he could potentially, maybe, we've seen some guys come back and run a lot better 40. Maybe they just were nervous at the combine. Maybe they ate something wrong out in Indianapolis. Who knows?
Yeah, pro day could help.
Pro day can maybe right the ship a little bit, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, pro day could always help. And there was this one reporter that I think Joe got mad at the one time. I guess everybody back then, and everybody kind of now still, they always run a faster 40 at Haluba. And somebody said to Joe, if you rolled a quarter down the 40-yard dash at Haluba, it would start going downhill, because the thought was that it must be slanted or something. And Joe freaked out at the reporter about that. But it does seem like guys always run better at Haluba. So hopefully that's the case for Kalen King. Hopefully it's the case with everybody. Like, it'd be awesome if you could see Daquan Hardy run a sub 4.3 at the pro day.
Yeah, if you're Kalen, you almost have to get at least into the 4.5s, if not into the 4.4s, to make up some ground there.
Yeah, 4.5s you could work with as a corner.
You gonna go Olu?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
I thought he didn't have to do much to make people feel good about it. He ran a 5.11 40. Vertical jump 32, broad jump 9 foot 1 inch. But most importantly, came in at 6'6", 312, which I think is good. 34 inches in arm length. Again, some people were criticizing his smaller hands at 8.5 inches. I think he's probably the second offensive tackle off the board at this point. I think most people are taking Joe Alt from Notre Dame over him as of right now. That doesn't mean somebody falls in love with him and it doesn't matter. But the combine really didn't matter too much for Olu. As long as he didn't do, what was that guy from Oklahoma? The offensive line, or was it Orlando Brown who came and then he ran that awful 40-yard time and he dropped back. It was like a 6-second something 40.
Ooh.
I don't know if you remember that.
I don't.
He
ended up being a pretty good player, right?
Yeah, but he was supposed to be like a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
And he ran a really bad 40, and he did slide quite a bit because it was just so bad. But Olu didn't do that. 5'11" at 312 pounds is very impressive. I mean, it's good. You know, I can't even go out there and run a 5'11" at over 100 pounds less than that. So, yeah. Very impressive.
Yeah, I mean, Olu was an obvious guy that was going to knock the combine out of the park. Not just with what you see because he's such a great athlete, but you knew he was going to interview well. And the interviews are the part of the combine that, again, kind of like the winter workouts, we can't see, but they mean, the interviews mean almost as much. And Olu is just such, he does so well in an interview setting. So do all our guys, but Olu, I know is going to knock it out of the park in that setting. So if you're me, I'm definitely taking Olu Fashanu over Joe Alt. I am unabashed in that, not just because.
Not surprised by that, Shawn.
Yes, he's just unabashed supporter of Olu over Joe Alt. So. Yeah, I think he solidified himself as a top 10 pick, and that's what he was looking to get out of it. And I think he certainly succeeded. I didn't see that he came up limping after the 40.
Oh yeah, he pulled a thigh.
Yeah, that's all it is a pull. It's not that big a deal.
No, he said he'll be good for the pro day, I think is what was said there.
Yeah, Caden
Wallace set some lofty expectations himself about what he wanted to achieve. This is a guy I think is going to run a lot better in a pro day. He ended up with a 5.15 40 at 314, 6'5". But he was talking some stuff beforehand that he was expecting to do even better. His broad jump was third best at 9'8". He did some really good stuff in the field work, and he's starting to generate some serious buzz, Shawn. Like there's the Twitter NFL Combine scout fellas are all over Caden Wallace as of late. He's a guy that I am starting to think he's going to go in day 2. Like I thought I was like maybe he sneaks into day 2. I'm feeling pretty good that Caden Wallace has worked himself into day 2. And from what it sounds like, Shawn, is we thought his natural position was at guard. And maybe it still is in the NFL, but maybe it's like a Ryan Bates who, yes, he can play tackle. He's better at guard, but he can play, 4 out of the 5 spots. Or in Ryan Bates' case, he can play 5 out of 5 spots. But you can have a Caden Wallace drafted, and you can put him at right tackle, right guard, left tackle. Like that's a huge benefit. And I think they're going to at least give him an opportunity, whoever he goes, to maybe play some tackle, which. If you asked us 2.5 years ago, we'd be like, didn't think that day 2 for Caden Wallace at the NFL draft was even a possibility. He's really earned it.
He has, and Ryan Bates, that's a good comp for him because I think there's a lot of similarity there in terms of athleticism, versatility. Yeah, and I have always been on the Caden Wallace as a guard bandwagon. And at the Senior Bowl, he was working as a guard. So do I think he's going to have a chance to play tackle? Sure. And in the NFL, even more so than college, you bounce around a lot on the offensive line. Unless you're like a top tier offensive tackle or top tier offensive guard, you're going to bounce around a ton. You're going to play left tackle, you're going to play right tackle, you're going to play guard. Like there are some guys that have played all 5 positions. Dolphins have a guy, Liam Eichenberg, who's played all 5 positions. And there are a ton of guys like that. So that's a type of guy that I think Caden Wallace is going to be in the NFL. And that's always valuable because if there's an injury on the offensive line, a team could just go and say, all right, Caden could play tackle. We're going to put Caden there. Or Caden could play guard. We're going to put Caden there. So even if you're a 6-man, even if he's like a 6-man next year, he's going to play a lot. Yeah. I think in his rookie season.
No, I agree. I think a lot. I mean, even, being the 6th or 7th best offensive lineman on an NFL roster, like you are going to play a lot of football.
100%. Those guys. How many times do you see ankles get rolled?
Right.
Every week, right? Right. You see, this guy's out a few weeks at least. So you find your way in the field as a backup offensive lineman.
Yeah. And so pro day will be big for him. I think he can still make some ground up. But honestly, Shawn, I think he might be a day 2 guy. I think he's a 2nd, 3rd rounder, which kudos to him. Last person, Adisa Isaac, my favorite player last couple of years. A little disappointed with the 40 time, 4.74. I think he plays faster than that time. Came in at 6'4", 247. 10-yard split was 1.64 seconds. Hard to look at his numbers after looking at Chop Robinson's numbers because it's just like there's a difference there. But what Adisa Isaac has, like Adisa Isaac's probably going to be one of those guys where he was super productive and is probably not going to go as soon as you think he should go because the NFL just doesn't like maybe his measurables. And so probably not going to see him until day 3, but it had the production and the potential, I think, as far as the ceiling goes, to probably be a day 2 guy, but he's just probably not going to go until the 4th or 5th round.
I don't know. I think he can go earlier than that. I think
he should go earlier than that. I just feel I see these guys all the time, right, that have the production but don't necessarily have the measurables, and the NFL gets kind of cuckoo about that sometimes. And I think, unfortunately, that might affect Adisa. From a personality standpoint, from an interview standpoint, I think he's going to crush it. But you also have to wonder, like, he did have some injuries. Is that going to play a role a little bit too? Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I love the guy.
Yeah, I mean, they could get hyper-focused on measurables and things like that. You know who didn't have a great combine last year? Jair Brown. And he got taken in the 3rd round. And I think what could happen sometimes is a team falls so in love with the guy and they don't want to wait till the 4th round because they know he's going to be picked up by then and they're going to try to draft him on day 2. And that's exactly what happened with Ted Brown. John Lynch actually traded up to go get him. And I would say he had a good rookie season. He had an interception in the Super Bowl. So I think a similar thing could happen with the Adisa Isaac. I think, gun to my head, I'd say 3rd round for him.
That's 49ers is a spot where they love their defensive linemen.
Oh, I would love it if you went there. Yeah.
And they already got Kevin Givens, they got Jair Brown, and they are a team that doesn't seem to care as much about the measurables as they do the production.
Yeah, and they love Penn State guys, like you said.
Interesting. They got a lot of dogs at the defensive end spot or the defensive line already, but
they usually draft one every year, though. They'll still just keep adding ends, and that's a good philosophy, I think, in the NFL. Just add to what you do well. And the Niners, I know they haven't won the Super Bowl, but they are in it every year. They're contenders every year, and I think that's a good philosophy to have.
Being able to rush the passer, still dominating. Like, you know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, I don't know why teams haven't figured that out, and maybe they have. They just aren't good at taking the right chances or getting the right guys. But I don't understand. Like, it's not a complicated sport. Like in college football, you kind of have to guess because you're trying to judge 17, 18-year-olds that haven't necessarily grown into their bodies yet. You don't know their work ethic, etc. But if I'm an NFL scout, like, you have a lot of tape in front of you. You have measurables in front of you. They're relatively done growing. You have, competition against other really good players that you don't have sometimes in high school. Like, how can you not figure out, or how can you not even prioritize defensive line? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to me.
I mean, if you could keep your quarterback comfortable and you keep the other team's quarterback uncomfortable, you're going to win a lot of games in
Right.
football at any level. Especially, in college, you're going to win a lot of games. In the NFL, you're going to win a lot of games. Doesn't mean you're going to win every game, but if you could do that at a week in, week out basis, you're going to have a winning football team. Still, even with the spread and all these great athletes, still up front. It's still the game is still won up front. And yeah, get after the quarterback, protect your quarterback. That's the name of the game.
Well, let's move on from the NFL Combine. We'll talk more NFL draft as that gets closer. Again, the pro day is in about a week or two. I want to say it's like the 16th or something like that.
Yeah, it's usually right before spring ball, I think.
Yeah. So that will happen. We'll kind of update you on those kind of things. Trace McSorley threw some passes to Theo Johnson at the Combine. Shawn, do you want to not really break, but do you want to give us the update on the latest decommitment?
Yes, Amari Gaines, more like Amari losses. Amari Gaines decommitted from Penn State. Pretty disappointing. He was a 3-star safety, but I'm not really sure what happened there. It just kind of came across on, I think, last Friday or Saturday. It was a little out of the blue, but kind of back on the wagon. And I think he's still considering Penn State, so he might circle the wagons back. But like I said, I'm not really sure what had happened there between us and Mr. Gaines.
Well, no disrespect to Amari or any means like that, but if there's one position you feel relatively good about as far as reloading, it's Terry Smith and Anthony Poindexter at defensive back.
Yeah, we'll be fine. Yeah. I know we didn't talk about this before, but we should probably talk about Matt Zollers. I don't feel like we've talked about him enough.
Yeah, that was actually the one other person I really wanted to mention today.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, Matt Zollers. We just happen to have maybe the best quarterback in the country in the state of Pennsylvania. We talked a little bit about him last week. I think he's down to Penn State, Pitt, Georgia, and Missouri. Georgia and Missouri, they're probably going to be the toughest ones to beat out. So obviously Georgia's Georgia, won 2 out of the last 3 national championships, and Missouri apparently has NIL out the wazoo. So
out of the Mizzou?
Wazoo.
Mizzou.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Thank
so very, very good. So yeah, it's going to test our NIL capabilities, because when you're quarterback, you're going to draw a lot of NIL attention. I don't think I'm breaking any news here. So I think I do have faith that we could put an NIL package together for him and combine that with the fact that we've been after him for as long as we have been, and we've been after him a long, long time. I have a feeling he ends up here. So it's going to be tough. There's going to be we have a lot of teams to beat off. Georgia has famously taken our lunch money on the recruiting trail. But I think we get this done. I got a lot of faith that I have faith that we're able to bring him and Mr. Kritza into State College. And also another thing I heard about Becca Kritza today. I think this was the 24/7 guys. He's actually moving back to Miami. So he had moved back to Colorado. Now he's moving back to Miami. So I thought that's just a little tidbit to pass along.
I like tidbits.
Yeah. So Penn State, Florida, Cruton continues.
Cruton. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that, Shawn. Yeah, I had read a lot about Zollers today too. It was funny that we both were thinking about that. Big Ten headlines, Shawn. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about your boy Chip and Martin Winkledale.
Yeah, Wink Martindale.
Yes.
Yeah, so Chip Kelly, I don't think we talked about this. It's a little bit old news, but Chip Kelly ended up taking the job at Ohio State as the offensive coordinator. Obviously, a former head coach at UCLA. So I don't think if you were to tell me 5 years ago that the head coach at Northwestern, so I guess it would have been Pat Fitzgerald at the time, is going to take a coordinator job at Ohio State, I would have never believed you. Hi, Mitch. And now we're in a place with how crazy college football is that Chip Kelly, who is a legendary offensive mind, is going to take the job at Ohio State where I don't even think he's going to be one of three guys basically that are running the offense. It's not going to be his offense like Andy Kotelnicki's going to run the offense at Penn State. It's going to be Ryan Day's. It's going to be his. And it's going to be Brian Hartline's. And I just think that shows you exactly where we're at right now. And I think a guy like Chip, I think I don't think he gave this reason specifically, but this is the reason that, you've heard a lot about when you've had all these legendary coaches leaving college football, and you've had position coaches like a John Scott Jr. going to the NFL. With how crazy the transfer portal is and having to recruit your own guys and how crazy NIL is, these guys just don't want to deal with it anymore. And I think Chip Kelly just wanted to get back to coaching football. And he chose to take a demotion where he's just the third guy in the kitchen to get out of being a head coach at UCLA. And I just don't think this would have ever happened just 5 years ago. No way. I would have never believed it. But when it ended up happening, I really wasn't even that shocked because that's where we're at right now. And yeah, go ahead, Cory.
No, it's summed it up well. I'm saving all my disdain for the CFB rules conversation. So
okay. Yeah, and then another thing that happened that I don't think we talked about at all, Wink Martindale took the defense coordinator job with Michigan. Now, I just told you that a bunch of coaches are looking to leave college football. This guy is coming into college football. Wink Martindale for those of you who don't know, he was defense coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, and then he was defense coordinator for the New York Giants. And I think he ended up getting either mutually parted ways with the Giants or he was fired from the Giants. But good defensive mind comes from that Baltimore Ravens tree, which has been very, very kind to Michigan football the past 4 or 5 years now. And
before we do that.
Yep.
So there we go. Sorry about that yet again. But okay. Shawn, lay it on me. The rule changes that haven't officially, from what I understand, they have to officially come into it might not be voted officially until April. But what are we expecting the changes to my beloved college football? What are we doing now?
Okay, I'll start with the one that I like. Helmet communication. So the quarterback There's a 40-second play clock in college football. Quarterback's going to have 25 seconds where he could hear what the offensive coordinator is saying to him. And at the 15-second mark, just like in the NFL, communication gets cut. And the middle linebacker on defense is going to have the same kind of communication.
They still have to get those signals out to the wide receivers, etc.
Yeah, but I think it's going to look more. Yeah, that's true. I think it's going to look a little bit more like the NFL. But yeah, there is more no huddle in the in college than in the NFL. Some college teams just don't huddle at all. I'm not sure what Kotelnicki does with huddles. But like Jomo, we never huddled. So you do wonder how that's going to go. But they might adjust to, the coordinators might adjust their style to that, to getting the plays into the quarterback so everybody's on the same page and they don't have to go through all those signals, especially with what happened with the whole Connor Stallions thing last year. So you wonder if that had something to do with it. So that rule, totally good with. Next rule.
So.
Tablets on the sidelines. Again, I'm fine with that. Who cares? NFL's been doing that for years and years. It's a good way to get live pictures to the quarterback, to the other players as well. Good coaches could kind of adjust on the fly. That way.
They can play Clash of Clans on a sideline? Is that what we're doing?
I think that's only what Nick Sirianni does. But everybody else, they're going to be able to go over what they see, get instant pictures. So I think that's a good rule change. I think there are even some high school teams that do this. So, I'm fine with that. And now the most controversial one, the 2-minute warning. So at the 2-minute mark,
Hold on a second.
Yep.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so 2-minute mark of the second quarter, there's going to be a commercial break and a pause in game action. 2-minute mark in the fourth quarter, there's going to be a commercial break and break in the action. So, my thing on this, it's been happening in the NFL for years and years. And I think it's all right. I've never had an issue with the 2-minute warning itself. But I think the issue that people are going to have, I think the issue that my esteemed co-host, Mr. Lestochi, has, is it's just another way for them to get a timeout in, or a commercial break in. And is it all about money? Yeah, mostly it's all about money, that'll be the fourth. Now, supposedly, and I don't know, you watch a lot of college football, Cory. I heard Steve Jones talk about this. There are 4 breaks every quarter. Or is it every quarter or every half? I think it's every quarter. And the 4th break will be the 2-minute warning. So you're going to have the 4th break anyway. They're just going to make it the 2-minute warning. So his thinking was there's not going to be more commercial breaks. But I just don't think that's a thing, because if two teams score like 3 touchdowns, when it's on Fox, especially, it's going to 3 commercial breaks. That's just what happens. And they might be 45-second commercial break or minute-long commercial breaks. They might not be the full 3 to 4 minute commercial breaks, but there's still going to be a break in the action. So I kind of think that argument doesn't hold much water with me. I think it's a money grab.
Right. So that idea that we're going to have shorter commercials because of this, because I heard the same thing that, the reason the commercials were unbearable last year is because they had to fit the additional ad revenue into the same basic time slots. And so they had to be longer commercials. Baloney. And now this idea, well, if you add another slot, now advertisers won't be as worried about fitting all the commercials they have in because they know they will have the 2-minute warning no matter what. That was the rebuttal to what you were saying. But you're exactly right, Shawn. That is a pipe dream. It is malarkey that we are now going to have less commercials because we have the 2-minute warning to save us. We had commercial breaks last year that were over 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I remember sitting in Beaver Stadium and seeing that little number pop up for the commercial break and start with a 5. A 5. That is just ridiculous. And so, no, we're not going to see less commercials now. In fact, we're going to see more commercials now. Because to your point, if we have the 2-minute warning, I promise you, if there's 2 touchdowns that are scored inside the 2-minute warning, we're going to go to a commercial break. I can promise you that. And you're right. It might not be an insanely long commercial, but Fox News and even ESPN started doing this. This used to only be a CBS thing. They're all now doing the score a touchdown commercial break, kickoff commercial break fiasco that I absolutely can't stand. So don't give me this anything more than, oh, the NFL does it and it's actually beneficial for the game and the sport itself. No. This is all about the money and just yet another reason why this offseason has torn a little bit of my heart away from the sport that I love. It's just baloney. It's just crap. And it's just one more thing that's changing the game for the worse. They tell us all the time that they did the things last time to speed up the game, but now they're throwing a 2-minute warning in. How does that make any sense? How can you say you need to speed up the game last year and you have to go to a running clock and then come back and say you need a 2-minute warning? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's and I hate to sound like a broken record here, but the almighty buck rules college football, and these TV networks
Do you know what
rule
the golden
college
rule
football.
is?
What?
Do you know what the golden rule is?
Do unto others as you would want done unto you.
No.
All right, what is it?
The golden rule is he who has the gold makes the rules.
Yeah, and that's very true. And this is the consequence of $1 billion TV deal, because that's where the money is, Lebowski. And it's with the if people talk about people being in the stadium and everything like that, that's important. It's important to your revenue, but the big money is from TV. It's from the television deals, and that's where, no pun intended, the lion's share of the money comes from.
Well, no one's going to be at the games anyway, Shawn, because no one has a parking spot.
This is true. That is true. I will leave it at that. Can a brother get a parking pass? Am I right?
You're right about that.
Put that on a t-shirt.
We got to figure out how to get a t-shirt for that made. We got to talk about whether or not that fits the mold or not. I think it does.
Well, I think it does, but
I think it would sell a lot of shirts.
I think it would too. But
anyway, are you paying too much for health insurance? Too busy to read long, complicated policies? Meet Patrick Motti of Motti Health, a former Penn State letterman and your new health insurance coach. I don't know how many coaches we're allowed to have. It's still 10, right? Is it a GA technically? I'm not sure. Patrick leverages years of expertise to offer customized insurance solutions to help you develop a coverage game plan that secures your family's health and future. As a father, Patrick understands the importance of reliable health coverage for your family. From individual plans to family coverage, Patrick ensures you get the best protection for your health and budget. Motti Health. One broker, endless solutions. Still offering. As far as no one's told us that they're not offering this anymore. So we're going to tell you that you can still get this deal. $500 cash bonus for every customer referral. I don't know if that applies to us or not. But if you tell them that you came from Hardcore PSU FB, I'm sure somebody in management's going to be happy. So let us know. Quit overpaying for health insurance, Shawn. Visit MahdiHealth.com to schedule a free consultation with Patrick Mahdi today.
Patrick Mahdi, former Penn State letterman.
Yes. And I bet, I don't want to put words into Patrick Mahdi's mouth, but I bet he would be against the money grab of big TV in college football.
Yeah, I mean, he's given about $500 for referrals, so I would say no. He's probably a really generous guy.
Right. That's from what I have understood of Patrick Mahdi.
Yeah, that's what I would understand. That's what I gather from what you tell me every week.
Fan questions?
Let's get to them.
We have a lot of fan questions today. Saved the best for last here. Let's start with this question. Is it this one I want to start with? Sure. We can start with this one. This question is from Connor Marshall. Any freshmen that you think see the field this year? My money is on Quentin Martin. Also, and then I also asked people about things they hate to clean. He said the garage. Seems like just everything ends up rearranging and you don't make any progress. I think garage was actually a popular answer. Shawn, which freshman do you expect to see this year?
Connor stole my answer. I think the pretty obvious one is Quentin Martin. And then I think you have to look at maybe some of the receivers, maybe a Tyser Denmark, although he doesn't get here till the spring. I think that's a guy who has the athletic forte to be able to find the field. So my money would be on Quentin Martin as well. I think there's a very good chance that he's RB3, but I would probably go with Denmark or maybe Luke Reynolds.
Yeah, I like Reynolds. I was also thinking maybe Peter Gonzalez as well. Really like Peter Gonzalez.
Gonzo. Gotta love him.
Right.
Do you know I sat next to Steven Gonzalez on the Cata bus once?
I saw Gonzalez a lot around campus for some reason. Like there's certain people that you see a lot for whatever reason. He was one of those guys for me.
I was a history minor. He was a history major. So we had a couple classes together too. So I saw him in class and then one time, and I'm a pretty big dude myself. Steven Gonzalez was like two of me.
I don't know what I would do if I had two Shawns on the show.
I know. Yeah, just a big dude. Good football player too.
Shawn, I'm going to let you answer this question yourself. This is from Sean Clifford. Not Sean Clifford, but Sean Clifford. Lately, several big-name prospects have slipped away from us from Imhotep Institute in Philadelphia. Do you think this signals towards a systemic problem with recruiting from the school, or so that they are big-name, nationally recruited guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're doing all right at Imhotep. Just last season, we brought in two guys from Imhotep, the aforementioned Denmark and that name escapes me. Kenneth Wosley. So, and then a couple of years prior to that, we were able to bring in
Shakatoni from there?
Shakatoni's from there, and then Keon Wiley. So I think we're recruiting all right there. I know Zaire Mathis just went to Ohio State, and that's obviously a bummer. You don't like to lose the number, depends on who you ask, but maybe the top guy in the state to Ohio State. But I think for whatever reason, Mathis just wasn't that interested in Penn State. Sometimes you get that with guys. Some guys want to go somewhere besides the state school. They want to branch out a little bit more. Not exactly sure what happened, but Overall, I think we're recruiting all right at Imhotep, but it just sucks losing a guy like Mathis.
I'm not even going to say anything else to that. Just going to move on. Next question here. From I Love Bo Prabila. What's the deal with Drew Aller versus Bo Prabila for the starting job? Is there any chance Bo could start, or will he most likely be put in for packages only?
I guess this is Mrs. Prabula here. So, yeah, I think Drew's the guy. I think Drew's going to be QB1. Do I think we see more of Bo this year? Especially now, Bo low-key scored 10 touchdowns last year. I don't think people realize that. Like, combined passing and rushing, like, he scored a lot of touchdowns. Now, most of them were at the very ends of games. So you have to take that into account. So I think you will see him in bigger spots this year. Like, I would be shocked if you didn't see him against Ohio State this year. I would be shocked if you didn't see him against USC this year. So I think against the bigger teams, you're going to see some more of him. But I would be shocked if against West Virginia, Bo was the starter. That's nothing against them, but I just kind of think that's the reality of where we're at right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think maybe the leash is shorter than it was last year.
Sure.
But
yeah, because you have to keep in mind, neither one of these guys are Randy Kotelnicki's guys. Like, he's coming in here with fresh eyes.
Fresh eyes.
Yeah,
nice.
Like, he is coming in here with fresh eyes, with a fresh approach. So if he thinks, there's a change that needs to be needed, he's going to be like, yeah, put Bo in. But I think it's going to have to come down to that. I just would be shocked if Drew wasn't the guy to start the year.
Shawn, I don't know if you can read that, but I want you to ask this question to me, because I think I'll handle this one.
Yeah. Do you think a certain segment of the fan base is being too critical of Drew Aller? I hate cleaning any of the garage or attic, etc. But I got it all done during the miserable winter, so now I can enjoy spring. That's very good thinking beyond Big Ten.
That makes me think though of like Michael Scott though. He's like, I do my spring cleaning in January, so I don't have to do it in the spring. But I feel like that's kind of counterintuitive because you still have things to probably clean once you get to the spring. But what do I know?
Yeah, but things are nicer in the spring. You don't feel like cleaning your garage in the spring. I never owned a garage, so I can't really speak to
a garage.
But I could definitely see a garage not being fun to clean.
To answer this question, do you think a certain segment of the fan base is being too critical? No, absolutely not. He's a 5-star #1 quarterback in this class, was going to be the savior of Penn State football, was going to be a Heisman candidate and bring national championships back to State College. No. Penn State, not only that, but Penn State did exactly what they were supposed to do with him. They let him learn and develop behind a veteran quarterback. Now, they could have done a lot better job as far as providing weapons for him in the first year or having those weapons actually produce. But they have 2 really good running backs. They have a pretty good offensive line. They had a top 10 talent at left tackle. Like, they put a lot of things around this guy to succeed. And to this point, he has not lived up to expectations. Now, has he done a bad job? No. But he has not lived up to the expectations. You could maybe say he's exceeded expectations as far as taking care of the football. But he has not been the game changer. And that's the bottom line. Drew Aller will not be judged well if he comes in and does exactly what Sean Clifford was able to do. Which Sean Clifford got Penn State to a lot of good places. The expectations are much higher for Drew Aller to be more than what Sean Clifford was for Penn State. He needs, I don't want to say he has to be Joe Burrow, but he needs to be a game changer. When the game's on the line and he's flushed out of the pocket, he makes a play with his legs or his arms, and he is a difference. A reason why the defensive coordinator doesn't get any sleep at night. Nobody is really that concerned with Drew Aller to this point. They know he has the weapons. They haven't seen him necessarily put it all together besides maybe the Maryland game. So no, we're not being too critical of Drew Aller. In fact, I would argue maybe we're not being critical enough.
Yeah, I would certainly argue there's a segment of the fan base that wasn't critical enough of Drew Aller.
They're blaming
And
everyone but him.
as a matter of fact, most of the people in the media really didn't blame Drew Aller all that much. It was constantly the receivers, the receivers, the receivers, the receivers. And not that the receivers were good last year. They were not. And I think if you listen to the show, you'll know I was very, very critical of the receivers. Like the guy I was probably most critical of last year was Keandre Lambert-Smith. Like every week it felt like I was complaining about Keandre Lambert-Smith. But I also mentioned Drew didn't do anything to really elevate his receivers last year. And maybe it's a lot. I get it. It's a lot to ask for a 19-year-old to elevate receivers. But with lofty he came in with lofty expectations. And as of right now, he just hasn't lived up to them. And it doesn't mean he can't or he won't. Like you brought up Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow wasn't a good quarterback until like his junior or senior season. I mean, a junior season, he really wasn't that good. And then his senior year, he had the best year ever, literally. So, guys
had a lot of great weapons around him too.
Yes, Justin having two of the top 5 current receivers in the NFL certainly help. So, yeah, I mean, some guys just take time, and I don't think either of us are saying to quit on Drew Aller or anything, but it's do or die time this year. Like he's got to be better than he was last year.
Yeah. This is a fun one to wrap things up, Shawn. I love this question. This is from Tommy Puifs, which is a great name. Who do you think will be the starting linebacker trio? Let's just answer that one first.
I would go Kobe Kane. Tony Rojas.
Yes.
Dom DeLuca.
From a source that I'm going to leave quiet, being told Tony Rojas at the Sam, Kobe King at the mic, and Kavion Keys at the wheel.
Ooh. I mean, it could happen.
Could happen.
I mean, Kavion Keys is a guy that we heard a lot about last year. Like probably
big Kavion Keys fan.
We probably heard more about him than any redshirt freshman, I don't know, in a long time. Just guys, because most guys that you hear a lot about, they play a lot. And I think the thing with the linebacker room, it was just so loaded that we really didn't need to play him much. So it didn't really make sense to burn his red shirt. So,
right.
Yeah, but we heard a ton about him last year from coaches, from players. So, yeah, I could see that happen.
Do you see Keandre Lambert-Smith moving to the slot?
Yes. And that's because, assuming the top 3 receivers are going to be him, Fleming, and Wallace, makes more sense for Wallace and Fleming to be on the outside and to put Keandre Lambert-Smith in the slot. So, yes, I would say so.
And then finally, and I agree with that, I think, for now, starting right tackle.
I'll go Rucci.
I was going to say, do it. Just say it.
Yeah, I'll go Rucci.
Just to make it fun, I'll go Dunka.
Going to be one of them. I think it's going to be a rotation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'll see a whole lot of both of them.
There you have it.
Shout out Big Slabs, speaking of rotations.
Big, meaty episode today.
Yeah, surprising.
Yeah, a lot to discuss. We will be back next week, spring practice will be underway. I'm not sure how much we're going to learn in that first day or two, but we'll be back to discuss it.
Yes, sir. That sounds good. What was I gonna say? I forgot what I was gonna say. Must have been important.
You're going to say, make sure to like this video on YouTube if you're watching here, or subscribe
State Media
wherever
PSU.
you're listening to the podcast. Yes.
Give us a follow. Subscribe.
Just do it all.
Yeah. If you haven't subscribed yet and you listened all the way through, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button.
I couldn't imagine there's that many people that do that. I couldn't imagine.
I don't think so either. I hope so, but
Well, for Shawn Kane, I'm Cory Lestochi. You have been listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. Until next week, have a fantastic rest of your week and weekend.